Okay, so as you guys have probably noticed, the notes for this is going to be a little bit different. You guys were given guided notes. You're going to use those guided notes to annotate and take notes on. So today we're starting with the territorial expansion's impact on American Indians. So we're looking at expansion. Sorry, let me get my pen ready here. So we're looking at expansion and how that expansion impacted American Indians. And we're going to focus on the time period of 1800 to 1850. I want to start off today with the election of 1800. It's important to understand this election to have a better understanding of the time period. This is considered probably one of the most important elections in American history. So during the election of 1800, Jefferson won. The election was between Jefferson and John Adams. So here we have Jefferson, here we have Adams. So these two were against each other. So the election was between these two people. Essentially what ended up happening was Jefferson ended up winning, and then Adams ended up becoming his vice president. So I want you to think, what would happen if Hillary Clinton was Donald Trump's vice president? That was what the Constitution originally said, was that the second runner-up would become the vice president. So Jefferson won the votes, Adams was second, so therefore Jefferson would be the president, Adams would be the vice president. What's really important about this election is that this was technically the first peaceful transfer of power. What does that mean? It means it's the first time that somebody had won an election, a political election, that was from a different political party, and the power transferred from one person to another without any problems. However, having Jefferson and Adams as a president and vice president didn't work out really well. So this eventually led to the 12th Amendment, whereas when you vote for the president and the vice president. Now, after Jefferson won, he was known for simplifying the presidency. He simplified the presidency. Jefferson, was a farmer. He really believed in kind of the individual man and kind of being able to be self-sufficient. And so his goal was to simplify the presidency, and he did that by doing three different things. First off, he reduced spending. Second, he reduced taxes. Since he wasn't spending as much money, they didn't need as many taxes. And third, and finally, he believed in free trade. So we have the right to trade with who we want to trade with. So Jefferson winning the presidency really set the stage for westward expansion. Jefferson purchased Louisiana in the Louisiana Purchase. He purchased this for a total of $15 million, which was really a great deal. And he purchased it from France. So he got this entire territory right here, you can see it, all outlined for $15 million. This was important because this space right here essentially doubled the size of the U.S. So for somebody who didn't really believe in a strong government, he used his governmental powers to purchase that land. Once he purchased that land, he felt that it was important that it was explored so that we knew what resources were available there. So he enlisted Lewis and Clark to spend time exploring this entire area. They spent about 2 years doing that. And on the way, they ran into Sacagawea. Sacagawea was an American Indian. That ended up serving as a guide and translator. Now, by expanding westward into this territory, it did allow or lended itself to explorers wanting to establish themselves in this territory. When they did that, it caused hostile relationships between some natives and some Native Americans and some that wanted to expand into that territory. And part of the conflict was due to this idea that people had about manifest destiny. So this is a very famous painting. This right here is Miss Manifest Destiny herself. And she is overseeing and supporting the movement westward, right? So we see this movement westward happening. The idea of manifest destiny was that we were to go from the Atlantic to the Pacific and provide political support for the natives that needed political support. Now, mind you, the natives had their own political systems that were functioning just fine, but it was the idea that we needed to provide that support. People moved westward using a variety of ways. They went by canals, so waterways. They transferred by roads, and eventually railroads. And their rationale for doing that was from valuable resources. And farming. So as you see people moving westward, you see a variety of things. One, if you look, you do see the waterways. You do see a railroad right back here. You can see, it looks like these gentlemen right here have an axe, so they might be there to mine. You can see the farmers down here in the right-hand corner. And you even see the natives. And you can see that the natives are turning and looking at her with their bows and arrows in hands. And this is symbolizing, again, the relationship between the natives that were already established there and the people moving westward. This eventually led us into to the Indian Removal Act of 1830 underneath President Jackson. So this idea that we had manifest destiny, we had the right to this land or this property, led to a lot of tensions. President Jackson wanted a group of Cherokees to be removed from Georgia. The Cherokees did fight back when this happened, and they eventually took the case to the Supreme Court in a case called Worcester versus Georgia. Now, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Worcester, so they ruled in favor of the Cherokees and said that the Cherokees should not leave their land. The Cherokees have the right to stay in Georgia. However, Jackson did not enforce this ruling. And so therefore the Cherokees were forced westward. On what we became known as the Trail of Tears. Now, the reason why it became known as the Trail of Tears is because at the end, we believe that there might have been up to a fourth of the American Indians forced on this trail were killed or died. And so this just shows the hostility between the American Indians and the established colonists that wanted to move westward, and how those tensions caused problems really for the Native Americans, forcing them off of their lands and onto either reservations or just moving them from wherever their homeland was.